Okay, so we are on day two of our 75 days of cyber challenge, or our version of the 75 hard challenge. And these are the things that we need to do in order to meet the expectations of the 75 days, of course. So, five daily tasks, which is in order to accomplish building a project centered around Agentic AI in either Sentinel-1, or I may just have to settle with Windows Defender for Endpoint if I can't integrate Sentinel-1, since I already have a project for Defender for Endpoint. That is what I'm using as my source. Then we'll just have to focus on that. The Sentinel-1, it already has a Purple AI agentic AI function to it. So we may or may not be able to integrate something with that, but we'll just have to see. At least understanding how it works with Defender for Endpoint around agentic AI with the project that we have will help us better understand how Sentinel-1 functions in general. But the project that we are working with is mainly focused on a SOC function, whereas we're going to try to repurpose that project for a vulnerability management function. And we're going to try to take that and reach our end goal of reaching a providing a service or product that will generate at least $3,000 a month. So that'll be the ultimate goal of reaching success if we are able to accomplish this end goal right here. So the one of five tasks that we need to accomplish is the first 1 to 2 weeks we're going to be focusing on either writing, researching, or refactoring code. And then we're going to use the videos that we're making here to make videos or insights for socials, such as LinkedIn and YouTube. And then these other options right here are going to be the topics that we're going to be focusing on. So, um, as we progress, we're going to focus in on like vulnerability exploitation and maybe threat detection mapping, but it all depends on how focused we want to be on Sentinel-1. And then we'll bring in maybe some agent chaining strategies or things like that. But the main priority is going to be model behavior testing under real scenarios. Um, and then I need to, vlog anything that I do within this process here. So like I said, the first few weeks are going to be writing and researching code, um, doing 30 to 90-second insights and model behavior testing under the projects that we already have. And then as we begin to transition to uh, making repurposing this project for vulnerability management, then we're going to be focusing on vulnerability exploitation and remediation with Python. And let's see. And then as well, we'll see if we can take our written summaries. These are going to be our written summaries, and we'll take some screenshots and make it as some of our posts as well. And then this is just an additional diet that we need to follow as well during our 75 mark. All right. So on our first day, we were looking through Microsoft and trying to figure out one of the projects that we're working with is an Azure, it's a Microsoft project called Microsoft React that they're doing these workshops every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and they're showing how you can integrate OpenAI um, with uh, with Python, as well as linking it with ChatGPT's API function. And the thing that I found yesterday that I stumbled on, but I didn't necessarily get a chance to um, I didn't necessarily get a chance to do the research on just yet. I had just found it from the work that I did yesterday, is that with the Microsoft React workshop, they use an AI API key that has no key required. Whereas this other project that I'm working with, um, it's using GPT-5 Mini, which means that for this particular project, you do have to have an API key. And you can see right here, it says keys.py, which I'll open up here in a second. Let's see if I can open that. I never opened the keys.py section. See if I can find where that is. Code model. Here we go. If you go to keys.py, wait, I gotta restart my code space. All right, code space has been set up. And so if we open up keys.py, which this is the API key that you have to take in order for um, you to be able to link um, to OpenAI itself. But I want to say it's required if you're using GPT-5 Mini. But if we try to refactor this code to run with GPT 4.0 or 4.0, then we don't have to do that. So let's see if we can take a snipping tool. I'm just taking this for insight. So you see here, and this is, like I said, this is code we took from somewhere else. And we're going to try to figure out how we can make it work for what we want to do. So I want to, okay. So this is the example of the key we used. But if it is in fact, since we have seen that this is possible with no API key from the Microsoft React code, then we need to make this without an API key. We have to pick apart the um, so this is what we're going to be focusing on is we're going to take this and try to figure out why they're able to use no API key. This will be our main focus. The code we have one doesn't factor in the two houses. All right, so we need to figure out if 4.0 is even capable of doing what we're trying to do, which I assume that it is because this project is exactly the same. It's using GitHub, it's using Azure, um, it's using an Azure tenant ID. So pretty much everything that's being used for our the project is just using GPT 4.0. Um, Now this is also saying if the OpenAI host equals local, print using local OpenAI compatible API with no key. So we need to figure out how that section works. All right, so let's pull this code really quick. I need to figure out what was I on when I pulled that. Let me see. This is the best part about when I pull code and I don't pull the entire screenshot of where I got it from. So I'm assuming those spaces. Go to docs. I have two active. Actually, you know what? This is the one we need. Let's go to that. Okay. So this is from Vision yesterday. And within Vision, I think we went to notebooks and we went to, I already have this open here. Let's start at this. I have another code space open, so I'm gonna go back. Said I had two active. Oh no, this one's active. Let me see if I can reactivate it. So it's interesting because you can see. So, okay, I think I'm starting to put this together. I think what's happening here is this code space is able to work because we have inside of GitHub a virtual machine that's being hosted here, which allows us to run what we're running in a sense. So you can see here it says 2 core 8 GB of RAM, 32 gigabytes of storage, which is what allows us to run the VS Code as a code space, is it's linking to Azure with a VM. So that's the reason why we don't need a PC. We don't have to have Azure stored locally on our computer because GitHub has, in a sense, integrated with Azure, is what I'm seeing here. So let's see. I wonder if I can, let's jump back into this. And we can open this in a code space. So I was actually wondering how that whole thing works. And Seeing that particular fact helps me understand how I can access Visual Studio inside of GitHub without having to download it on my local computer. Because in a sense, this is running off of a virtual machine. And the question becomes, who's absorbing the cost of these virtual machines? And how long has this been around? I don't know. We'll figure it out. So from here, I went to notebooks and chat vision. I think this is where I got it from. And I can go here with chat vision. This is the code. If I go to preview, so this is running like a Jupyter notebook inside of. So this is what makes this is very complex is because I used to have to download Jupyter Notebook on a PC as well as download uh, Visual Studio. But inside of here we have a Jupyter Notebook inside of I guess it's a virtual machine in Visual Studio, or it can load up as Visual Studio right here and run as a Jupyter Notebook here inside of GitHub. I mean, honestly, it's pretty complex, but and to add on to that, you can also ask GPT 4.1 here or 4.0. So it already has GPT integrated here inside of this code space as well. So you can just ask it straight here about like, you know, what do I need to do with this? Hmm, which is interesting. So I wonder if I can highlight something. Nice. So you can see where it says when you highlight something, you can see you jump into a cell. So you jump to a cell that says cell 5, and it um it highlights where you're clicking. So this is cell 5, this is cell 3, and say if we want to do I don't necessarily know how smart this is going to be using local. Okay, so what I want to figure out is I need to zoom out on this. But what I want to figure out is why can I so you can see highlighted cell 3 lines 11 through 28. So this is 11 through 28. Let's get 11 through 29. 11 through 29. Okay. So why? Is this available to everyone? Um, OpenAI model with no API key here. So this is the thing. This is just part of the notebook itself. But when you go into the actual code, I want to see what it does. Add endpoint URL in local OpenAI endpoint. Then initialize the OpenAI endpoint. So we can see here in local lib Python 3.12 site packages OpenAI client.py. Okay, so this is running on localhost. Okay, so from what it's saying here, if I copy this, switch back over, especially saying, no idea what the heck is going on. That's the uh, local. Yeah, buddies. What did it say? To use the AI model with no API key, looking at local OpenAI compatible API on the product, you need to set the environment variable OpenAI host to local and provide the endpoint URL and local OpenAI endpoint. Then initialize the OpenAI client with API underscore key equals no key required in your local endpoint. So I need to figure out where this is right here. So this right here is important. Need to find where this is in the code. Okay. So if we go back here, we need to find where this is not on the border. All right. So inside of here, we need to go to a file. This is Spanish, notebooks. So what would this be? Where is this in the Explorer files? This thing entered the back end of the code. Chat.5 security. The relevant logic is implemented in the configure open API function. I don't see. Oh, source chat.py. Dude, this is a cheat code. Okay, let's see. Da, 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 da. So say you can find the backend code that handles the Open API, OpenAI client initialization from local GitHub and Azure models and chat.py. The relevant logic is implemented in the configure OpenAI function, which sets up the client based on environment variables similar to notebook code you referenced. This section, what line is this? Current app. Okay, current app. Logger info. Authenticate using an Azure OpenAI API key. This is generally discouraged, but is provided for developers that want to develop locally inside the Docker container. Okay, let's see. So now this is where it gets a little bit tricky because it says configure OpenAI BP model name OS gate environment OpenAI model GPT 4.0 OpenAI host OS gate environment OpenAI host GitHub. If OpenAI underscore host equals local, OpenAI client equals async OpenAI API key, no key required. And so it seems like you would need async from OpenAI. Okay. Azure OpenAI endpoint. All right. So in a sense, this is what I'm looking for. Now the question is, what is considered to be local in this? When it says local, so now I took the whole context, found it here in chat.py. So with that, now I need to figure out, it says that the API using an API key A local API key is generally discouraged, but made you but allowed by developers within a container. So this warning just saying don't use in production without an API key. So Josh is encouraging an API key because it's best practice. This is using no API key just because not secure, not meant for security, but development, which makes sense coming from Josh. Security is his primary objective for his content. Okay, so the API key is more so meant for security and protection of the information, especially if you're going to link it to an environment like Azure and start scanning through information, which would be like a production environment. So it adds a little bit. But the API key is generally like a password, and so in a sense, you're somewhat secure in it because you're using an API key. Now the question is to figure out if that even is secure. And so question hope to answer. Let's put side question in the future is how secure is the API key? And process with these AI resources. Every application I make typically requires one, but programs like um, Firebase and auto-generate them. When we have time, get a chance, need to do some research on API keys. Okay. All right. Namini, 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 volume, namini, 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 namini. Okay. So we're coming up on the 45-minute mark, and let's see what we can find from main thing for this first week is to figure out how all this works in a sense. Um, so this is our main focus point right here. Base URL. Models GitHub.ai inference. So API key equals os.environment. So let's see. Show code actions. What does that do? View. Is that says without checking if it is set if missing? I don't really want to do that. Okay. Now, what I want to figure out is with this right here. I know these questions that I'm going to be asking are very basic. Azure Open API with key. Okay, so this is saying if your OpenAI host equals local, then you can do async OpenAI, no key required. Elif OpenAI host equals GitHub, then you would do your API key equals GitHub token and then base URL models.github.ai inference, which I don't know where that goes. And then current underscore app dot logger info using GitHub models with GitHub token as key. Elif. So if it's not local and if the OpenAI host is not GitHub, then if the OS environment is Azure OpenAI key for chat vision, authenticate using an Azure OpenAI API key. This is generally discouraged, but is provided for developers that want to develop locally inside the container. So you would do a BPO OpenAPI client async OpenAI base URL Azure OpenAI endpoint API key Azure OpenAI key for chat vision. So these are keys that are provided somewhere. And then Elif running in production, you would do client ID OS Azure client ID. So that Azure client ID will pull from somewhere else. And then it would say Azure credentials, manage identity credentials, which are probably not in here. I wouldn't think they would be. At least it wouldn't be viewable by the public. Let me make sure I got this code. Can I fork this? Fork all day. Shows code and implement local no API key as well as production base. Yeah, 'cause this right here, I gotta have that. All right, so let's see. Where are repositories? This and that. I'm dressed in black. Local. So if I download a zip here, so I really just want to make sure I have it. New repository, import repository. Copy Wings, Microsoft, Micro, I don't know, Micro R, um, Vision, Vision API, Python, code, download it, Vision, Python, code, Micro R workshops. I just want to make sure that if they, for whatever reason, decide to take it down, I'll still have it. We're gonna make that private. Create the repository. And then we're going to upload an existing file. Choose the file here. I may have to unzip it. But like, let me unzip that. So like, I don't know if it's gonna actually do what I need it to do. So we're gonna extract all here. Okay. All right, we need to upload these files. Do that. And we do all of them. Open. Okay. I just want to make sure I have this because I don't want to lose it. I mean, maybe the fork works, maybe, but I'm not gonna trust that it will. Popular repositories. Where is my private? I wonder how to find this one's private. Okay. So I did fork this one. This one's public. And so I'll keep the public one and then I'll have the private one as well. Okay. Okay, so we'll stop here on the recording.